11th. A National Socialist is someone who wants to save his race. A conservative is someone who wants to save his money. Commander George Lincoln Rockwell. Barrow and Oliver Lodge met alone in Lodge's suite at 8 o'clock next morning. Lodge had a room service breakfast for two laid out. Barrow noticed that even this early, the international executive was wearing a suit and tie. "Help yourself," Lodge said. "I've always liked breakfast meetings. I have found that men tend to think more clearly and sharply in the early hours. Oh, one thing before we tuck in. This is a damned nuisance and an imposition, but the head of our FBI security detail has asked me to ask you if you have any idea where Senator Galinsky's intern MS Horowitz might have gotten to? She seems to have gone missing, and supposedly you two had some words back on day one here. We got a bit bored last night, so we decided to sacrifice a Jew to our pagan gods by burning her in a wicker cage under the stars while we danced around the bonfire in horned helmets," said Barrow. "That's in rather poor taste, don't you think?" said Lodge disapprovingly. "How the devil should I know where Mr. Stanhope's recreational vehicle is?" replied Barrow irritatingly. "I'm not screwing her. If we couldn't restrain ourselves from making away with Jews for a while, we wouldn't be here. I understand one of your young men has had a, prior acquaintance with Miss Horowitz?" probed Lodge delicately. "Yes, she was part of the family. Your government sold him to like a pet hamster under the It Takes a Village program," said Barrow. "Cody doesn't want any more to do with her or any of them, and anyway, he was in our part of the hotel last night with me and the other members of the delegation." "One other member, anyway," said Lodge, smiling and shaking his head as he held up a copy of the front page of the USA Today, which showed Cody and Nightshade in a photograph taken through what appeared to be a night vision lens, locked in a passionate embrace the night before out by the vending machines. The caption read, "Northwest Nookie. I do apologize for that," said Lodge. "The behavior of some of these press people is abominable. I remember when this was a reputable paper. You created a rubbishy public so the media gives them rubbishy entertainment. Look, I don't mean to sound so crotchety, Mr. Lodge. Thank you for seeing me. I know this is a violation of the conference protocols. We're not supposed to be meeting with one another without other members of our delegations present, which always indicated to me that you must not trust each other. My people don't object to my meeting you in private, but apparently yours do. That tells me something. Maybe that indicates I should have done this a long time ago. Am I correct in my surmise that you are the man who holds the real power in this dog and pony show, and that if you and I can come to some kind of understanding, we can pack up our briefcases and go home?" Lodge shrugged. "Well, I like to think my word carries some weight with my colleagues," he said. "Weintraub and Galinsky are here because they pretty much have to be. If we tried to sit down and have a powwow with you boys without someone from the tribe in attendance, the stink would be beyond bearing. But you shouldn't discount Walter Stanhope's clout as well. He's a player. You might say I speak for the world of business, and he speaks for the world of government and politics. Brubaker is here as a sop to the military, who never like to admit they're beaten in any era." "So you admit you're beaten?" asked Barrow keenly. "I said the military don't like implying they're beaten," said Lodge. "And so I will go so far as to say that right now it would be really convenient for us if we could cease pouring money down this Northwest rat hole and get on with putting out some other fight, like the one which is approaching in the Middle East and in our overseas possessions. You guys are the mouse that roared, and this whole sideshow is bad for business." "By business I presume you mean the couple of thousand men in suits who actually run the whole planet through international finance capital?" said Barrow. "Yup. That's who I mean," said Lodge. "The great big bad world conspiracy itself. Insofar as there is one, I guess we're it. Not even a couple of thousand of us. A very wise old Jewish gentleman, Walter Rathenau of Germany, once made the comment that 300 men, all acquainted with each other, control the destiny of the world. That was in 1923. Today I'd put it at about 500. I know most of them, and the rest will take my calls. I recall that for all his alleged wisdom, Rathenau was run down on the streets in his limousine and shot down by some young German officers in retaliation for his pulling the plug on German ammunition production at the height of the 1918 Spring Offensive," said Barrow. "When H. A. Covington. Hitler referred to the Jewish stab in the back. Rathenau's was the hand on the dagger. An interesting parallel, Mr. Lodge, and an instructive lesson. All the power and all the money in the world can't stop a bullet when it is fired by a heart that is proof against all your temptation and all your money and all your threats. That's why so-called terrorism drives you people around the twist. Terrorism is the weapon of the weak against the strong, and it is a highly effective one, possibly the only one that can get through to you anymore, the only weapon that can pierce your wall of power and privilege. You can't bribe a bullet, you can't corrupt it, you can't vote it away, you can't brainwash it into thinking it's a snowflake, you can't have a corrupt judge in a black robe bang his gavel and make it go away, you can't sue it, you can't jail it, you can't hire some dumbass local deputy to beat or murder it, and once it's fired it's going right into the target. You and your kind have to keep all the hearts and minds of humanity in darkness and bondage, because it only takes one free man to pull a trigger and bring all your schemes and your constructions to nothing. That's why we're here, because white men's hearts and our souls have escaped, and all the king's horses and all the king's men can't put Humpty together again? Bluntly, yes, said Barrow. I won't lie to you, Barrow. A large part of why we are here speaking to you today, instead of hunting you down like dogs, is that you have demonstrated the capacity to kill, and I don't mean homeboys or Mexican braceros or Joe Schmo the cop on the corner. We don't care about ordinary people. They are an inexhaustible resource, mere gangsterism we could handle until the cows come home, but you are gangsters who understand what targets to select, and that is something new. You don't shoot at Oz, the great and powerful, all smoke and mirrors. You shoot at the little man behind the curtain, and that has gotten our attention. If it makes you feel any better, I will concede your point. A large part of the reason for this conference is that some of those 500 men who really count have been hurt, and you have seriously interfered with the conduct of our business by forcing us to worry about you, to take you into consideration. That has to stop. The old man calls it breaking the credible monopoly of force on the part of the state. By the by, we want you to let him go. But he has sent word that it's not necessary. He's willing to stay there in Florence and be murdered if the mood strikes you. He doesn't care about himself so long as we don't yield, and we bring the Republic into being. I imagine that perturbs you as well. You've never dealt with anyone to whom money wasn't the be-all and end-all, have you? Well, it's a little premature to talk about his status, said Lodge with a smile, but I do have a little surprise for you on the prisoner release front. Today, in fact, I've noticed you're getting a little antsy, and I figure it's time we made a gesture. Call it compensation for these strenuous negotiating sessions. This isn't official, just something I did on my own bat. Well, Walter Stanhope came up with the idea, actually. He seems to be almost sympathetic with you at times, although I put that down to the fact that he got turfed out of the Senate by a taco bender. And how will your Jewish colleagues react to this little bit of generous unilateralism on your part, whatever it may be? Inquired Barrow. They have less to say about it than you might think, said Lodge seriously. Certainly much less say than they would have had in the past, when Jug-Ears and his neocons ruled the roost with an iron hand. Again, that's largely thanks to you boys and your habit of filling the little man behind the curtain with lead. A lot of those little men behind the curtain that you've whacked out were Jewish, and we've seen that they are by no means invincible or omnipotent. We've also discovered how easy it is to do without them. You're right. All the protexia in the world can't stop a bullet. Jeanette Galinsky is here because she's Hillary Clinton's eyes and ears. Weintraub is here because Israel wants him here, but don't overestimate their influence. Jewish power is still strong in the world, Barrow, but not nearly as strong as it was 50 years ago. But they're actually a separate faction within the capitalist world. Probed Barrow. Well, let's say that as a group, the Jewish world financial community sometimes has interests which are a bit divergent from the rest of us, said Lodge carefully. Now, Frank, suppose you just go ahead and say what you want to say. Barrow sighed and helped himself to some scrambled eggs. Articles 83, 84, and 85, he said. They're not on. Not now, not ever. Don't even bother to bring anything like that up again. We set our own tariffs and we issue our own money and we control our own economic policy. I know you don't believe this and you're going to try to get around it. But when I read those passages in that big mass of bullshit you laid on us, I finally understood how little point there is in our staying here. I've come to tell you that despite the fine hospitality and excellent cuisine of this establishment, we're going to be leaving soon, most likely tomorrow, unless of course you try to stop us, in which case we're going to kill as many of you as we can before we get shot down ourselves. We came here to end the war and bring our new nation into existence. Almost every day since we have been here, we have presented for your signature a simple single H. Covington page document of 6 points which would bring 5 years of bloodshed to an end. No terms, no conditions, no indemnities, no recriminations. Just a simple agreement that this war is over, we have won, and you leave now. We are serious about that document, but apparently you people either cannot or will not understand that it's over. You fought a war to keep us in the Union, you have lost. Now it's time to pick up your marbles and go home. In return, all we have gotten is ream after ream of bullshit like that draft proposal you finally gave us. I've looked that over and I am appalled. You seriously don't think we're going to stay here in this hotel for another year quibbling on and on about crap like that, do you? There's nothing difficult or complex about what we want. What part about you have 2 weeks to get out do you not understand? As to those articles that reduce our nation to the same servitude we just fought for 5 years to escape, I suppose you thought that I was so dumb I wouldn't notice them? No, not at all, General, said Lodge. I never thought you were dumb. Anyone who can force the United States of America to even consider some of the things we have discussed at this conference isn't stupid. We know that, even if some of our colleagues of the Hebrew faith might not entirely grasp it. There's a lot of things they don't grasp. Like the coming to an end of their world? Asked Barrow. That's definitely something they don't grasp, agreed Lodge. The Jews are a very ancient people and they have survived a lot, but this has led them to believe that they will survive forever. But time marches on, even for them.
I and the men I do business with understand that now, Frank.
You and your crew have made us understand it. It is not a lesson we have enjoyed learning, but we have learned it. You seem to think that Articles 83 through 85 are some kind of insult or attempt to do you in or enslave you. They are not. They are actually an admission on our part that you have won. You didn't read them right. We weren't shutting you and your gunmen out, we were letting you in. Giving you something you would never have had in a million years if you hadn't done what you did. We are offering you a cut. I don't mean you personally. I wouldn't insult you by offering to bribe you. But your party, your new government, your new nation, you get a cut that you can use to do anything you want. Build 1,000 statues to Adolf Hitler if you want. Create your ideal white homeland. Whatever you want to do. Of course, by accepting this cut, we also acknowledge that it's your pie to divide, said Barrow. It isn't. Never mind, I see you still can't hear the word no. Probably you never will be able to. I suppose you're constitutionally incapable of it. On another subject entirely, let me ask you something, Mr. Lodge. Have you men in the suits in the corporate boardrooms decided to finally dump Israel? When the Arabs attack next year and Israel frantically calls to the U.S. for help, are they finally going to get an answering machine? Well, I'm just a businessman and I wouldn't know anything about that, of course. Barrow waved his hand. I think we can take all the disclaimers as read, Mr. Lodge. Okay. Disclaimers having been read. Israel was an interesting experiment, an experiment which after a century the world needs to admit has failed, said Lodge. An attempt to bring the sidewalks of New York to the land of the Bedouin and the mosque. The British originally offered Palestine to the Jews in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration. It was a bribe in order to induce them to change sides during World War I and stab Germany in the back, as your Adolf Hitler so presciently observed. It was never intended to be taken seriously, but the Jewish people have always produced a high percentage of neurotic obsessives, and a lot of them did take it seriously. Its original strategic purpose from the free world's point of view, or the capitalist world if you will, was as a forward airfield and an outpost in a largely Soviet-controlled region. That purpose hasn't been valid for well over a generation, and eventually we ended up having to go in and conquer that part of the world ourselves at great expense after all, in order to secure our oil supply. Your oil supply? Interjected Barrow with a bemused chuckle. My God, you honest to God don't get it, do you? Lodge disregarded him. In the long run, that little colony proved to be more trouble than it was worth. Sometimes one simply has to do that. Admit you've made a bad investment and let it go. When you think about it, dumping a few million Jews down into the middle of a sea of hostile Arabs and trying to steal a little sliver of land from them that happened to be some of the holiest real estate in Islam, right out from under the noses of 1 billion Muslims. Wasn't a very smart idea, but remember this was done in the aftermath of World War II, when the Jews in America were riding high, wide, and handsome on a wave of victory that would never end, when Jewish arrogance and Jewish hubris knew no bounds. After their help during World War II in destroying National Socialism and making the world safe for big money again, they presented their bill, and we said, what the hell, what are a bunch of ragheads going to do? So we gave them their shitty little country just to shut them up. Big mistake. And now you think you're giving us our shitty little country just to shut us up? Said Barrow. Well, I can live with that. I don't care what you think of us so long as that Masonic dish rag goes down from our sky. H. A. Covington. And the tricolor goes up. But we aren't Jews. We're serious about this new world we're making. And I feel constrained to repeat that these 3 articles that give you looting rights on everything of value we've got aren't on. Nothing of the kind is going to happen. When you leave everything with the word federal in it leaves, and that most especially includes your Federal Reserve. General Barrow, we don't give a damn who works those mines and forests and ranches, so long as we get our cut, no pun intended, said Lodge. It's true that third world immigrant labor is cheaper, but believe it or not, over the years we have come to understand that what's cheaper in the short run can prove to be more costly in the long term. We understand the necessity of investing money in long-term projects. We are willing to make your new country a long-term project. Man is an economic animal. Oh, you get guys like that big hillbilly with the beard who thinks he can fight and shoot his way out of anything, but eventually economic man triumphs. Once you boys are sitting there in those offices with the power and the responsibility, behind some desk with a sign on it that says the buck stops there, things will look very different, believe me. And you know, we really don't hold you in quite the contempt you seem to feel. This whole revolution of yours has been quite a daring exploit, although it was no fun having your bombs and your bullets aimed at us. I'll be honest with you. A good many of my colleagues are looking forward to dealing once again with guys who look like us and like girls. Dear me, that statement would get a working man from one of your assembly plant 5 years in prison, said Barrow. It might even get you a few mandatory hours of sensitivity training. Hardly. I wrote the template for most corporate ethnic diversity and sensitivity training courses, so I know they're crap, said Lodge with a chuckle. The school books teach our children that America is about freedom and democracy and the pursuit of happiness, and lately they teach that it's about diversity. That's horse hockey, General Barrow. America is about the accumulation of wealth. Columbus wasn't trying to prove that the world was round. All educated men from ancient Greece onward who could look at the horizon and understand what they were looking at knew that. He was looking for trade routes to the East Indies, but why was he doing that? For the greater glory of God or the spirit of intellectual inquiry? Bullshit. He wanted to be rich. All of our ancestors who came to this country, other than the ones who were shipped here in chains as indentured servants just like the blacks came here in order to find wealth, gold, land, tobacco, cattle, opportunity to have more than their neighbors. And even the ones of our people who came here in chains. And there were as many of those as there were black slaves, were brought here in order to make other people rich. Including a good many of your Boston Brahmin forebears, Barrow reminded him. Including a good many of those, agreed Lodge. Oh, not that we're not a spiritual country as well. We've always had more religion than we can stand, as I hear you folks are already starting to find out. God in America has always been foursquare on the side of the big man with the money who drops the parson's portion into the collection plate. That, and it gives Americans yet another excuse to make ourselves feel superior to other people. Why, the Pilgrims had barely gotten their first log cabins built before they were whipping Quakers through the street and driving red-hot nails through the tongues of people who said something the church elders didn't like. America has always had a hell of a lot of religion, just a different kind. Europe produced the great Gothic cathedrals. We have prosperity theology. Europe produced St. Vincent Ferrer and St. Francis of Assisi. We produced Billy Sunday and the Reverend Ike. I'm not surprised you people have some religious issues of your own. You get this new country of yours, you ought to try prosperity theology as a state religion. Our own Native American denomination that fits all. What the hell is wrong with a God who wants you to have a Cadillac? God's Cadillac comes with a few too many strings attached, said Barrow. Like all those niggers riding free and ripping off the hood ornament. And all those Mexicans who want to chop it down into a low rider. You say that America is about wealth. That's wrong. America is about race. The two are inextricably intertwined. Look, I will give you this much, said Lodge, leaning forward intently. Race is the American problem. It always has been, ever since one of Columbus's sailors shot the first Indian with a matchlock musket. Aside from the Civil War of the 1860s and the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s, there has never been any kind of serious attempt by America seriously and honestly to address race. Maybe it's time that changed. We've put it off too long. We've got all kinds of different races and cultures on this continent now, and like so many kiddies, they can't seem to play nice. What do you do when you've got a house full of squalling kids who can't get along, and who keep on beating one another with their toys and screaming so loud you can't hear yourself think? You give them a timeout and send them to their rooms until they settle down and ask to come out and decide to play nice. So why shouldn't we send all of our little minorities to their own rooms and make you stay there until you can play nice? H. A. Covington. They've got it already, said Lodge flatly. Yes, that's coming. Aztlan will simply recognize an established fact, and I don't think there will be any trouble from them over their versions of Articles 83 through 85. The Hispanic peoples have always taken a very pragmatic approach in matters of government and business, and the relationship between the two. I believe it's called corruption, said Barrow. Well, I won't argue with you, sir. I guess I'll just have to show you. This morning I'll formalize it. You sign the 6 points and we run up our tricolor on that flagpole outside, or else we go back to the shooting and the bombing, starting with an assault on Portland. This round will be real civil war. I hope you're prepared to live with that. Damn it, you know I don't want anything like that to happen, Barrow, wheedled Lodge. Jesus, I'm not some kind of monster. I'm more sympathetic than you might think. After all, if you know anything about me, you'll know that even though I serve a Democratic administration at the moment, I'm considered to be a staunch conservative. Well, you see, there's the problem, replied Barrow seriously. I'm a National Socialist. And how do you define the difference? Asked Lodge. I'm willing to acknowledge to you, in private, that there are a lot of similarities. Although if you ever repeat that outside this room, I'll call you a liar on worldwide television. I don't define the difference, said Barrow, slowly and carefully. Commander Rockwell did. He said that a National Socialist is someone who wants to save his race. A conservative is someone who wants to save his money. I have said that race is the American issue, but the problem is we've never actually admitted it and resolved the core dispute, which is to whom does the continent of North America belong? The liberals and Reds have always claimed that America was founded by and for white racists and based on white racism. That's not true, unfortunately. If it was, if we had admitted de jure as well as de facto from the beginning that the white man was claiming this land for us and us alone, then things would have been a whole lot different. But economics intruded, and we just had to trade those barrels of perfectly good sippin' whiskey for 20 niggers back in 1619. America as we know it was created largely by conservatives, who by virtue of their racial and cultural heritage had the mental and spiritual wherewithal to do so. The result is that this country's a plutocracy, and so it always has been. That is what is going to change, Lodge. I know you don't believe this, but we're going to strip you of what you have and give it back to the people who created that wealth. Society will be reduced, once more to its organic components. The worker, the artisan, the soldier, the homemaker, and the farmer. The businessman is a factor in politics, and the civic order will disappear. You want to let us go, Lodge. Believe me, you want to let us go. I just wonder how long it's going to take you to figure that out. Do you think we would have come here if we weren't prepared to at least take a big step in that direction? Asked Lodge. I think you came here to see just how far we would bamboozle, said Barrow. The answer is a hell of a lot less far than you think. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well, we've been fooled enough. Enough bullshit, Lodge. It's over. You know what we want, and we either get it or we don't. I'm not going to waste any more time with that so-called draft agreement of yours. You might as well have saved yourself the paper. We're going to wind this up today and give you one last chance to sign off on our 6 points and end this war. One way or the other, this time tomorrow morning I'm calling for Chernilov and his copter. When we lift off, assuming you don't break bad on us and we don't go down firing, we will either have that signed document with us or we won't. Either way, we'll see how it plays out. Cody and Nightshade both accompanied the delegation into the conference room that morning for the daily meeting in order to forestall any possible difficulties with FBI agents who might be investigating the disappearance of Susan Horowitz. In fact, Senator Jeanette Galinsky attempted to bring up the subject immediately. "Barrow, where is my intern Susan Horowitz?" she demanded. "Ask Mr. Stanhope," said Barrow. "He keeps more track of her whereabouts than I do." "That little Nazi psychopath has done something to her," shouted Galinsky, pointing at Cody. "Not lately, ma'am, no," replied Cody in a level voice. "This is still the United States, and you Nazi pigs are still subject to United States law," shrieked Galinsky hysterically. "There's a whole corridor full of FBI agents out there, and all I have to do is call them, and they'll come in here and arrest you Nazi swine, and take you to prison where every one of you belongs." John Corbett Morgan drew out his magnum and laid it heavily down on the table in front of him. "Call them," he said flatly. "H. A. Covington." "That's not necessary, John," said Barrow uneasily. This was unscripted, the first time a weapon had actually been drawn. "I thought you were used to Mommy Dearest in her mouth by now. Why should I get used to it?" asked Morgan, his eyes glowing dangerously, transfixing Jeanette Galinsky like a snake with a rabbit. "I understand that less and less, as the weeks go by and we sit here and take nothing but abuse and insults from these people. I tell you what, you Jew bitch. You call your FBI men, and you see what happens. FBI die like everybody else. I know, I've killed me a few, including the one who murdered my wife. I watched Special Agent Bruce Goldberg die with a burning rubber tire around his neck, lady. I listened to him die, and that was even better. So for the last time, unless you have something important to say, you'd better keep your goddamned liver lips shut. Because right about now my patience with you is as thin as a fiddle string." "We all feel that way," Barrow told him, standing up. "Put the iron away, John. There's no need. We're going to go ahead and wind it up now." Morgan sighed and put the magnum back in its holster, and everyone in the room breathed a bit easier. "I have an announcement to make," continued Barrow. "One way or the other, this will be the last session of these proceedings here at Longview. We have been here for almost 2.5 months. There has been virtually no progress, and it doesn't seem there is going to be any. Accordingly, I am going to give you one last chance to sign the 6-point agreement which we have been presenting to you virtually every day for the past 10 weeks. If you do not, then we have to assume that the United States is not serious about bringing the present conflict to an end. 10 weeks is enough, ladies and gentlemen, more than enough. We have our border delineated, thanks to the diligent work of our subcommittee, and frankly, we got more than we expected, including most of Wyoming and more of Montana than we thought we could glom. Groovy. That was the important part of this conference, but none of that is worth anything so long as we keep dragging this out. It's time to sign on the dotted line and then we're out of here. Or not, as the case may be. My comrade's theatrical flourishing of the weaponry notwithstanding, we know we can't make you sign at gunpoint. But it is time that you people faced up to the reality of why you are here. A new world is beginning and it wants only your signatures, twice, once on each copy of this simple treaty. Barrow placed the documents down on the table before him. There is nothing complicated about getting the hell out of our country in 2 weeks, and it is well within your logistic capabilities to get all your forces out of the Republic in that time. If you do need any help in getting out, free passage on our highways or gas for your vehicles or anything like that, by all means, we'll speed you on your way. But this delegation is leaving this room now, and we're leaving this hotel tomorrow, early. We've eaten our last breakfast buffet in the Sockeye Grill. Our breakfast tomorrow will be field rations with our army preparing for the assault on Portland if your General Partman decides he wants to break bad on us. That need not happen. I assume and hope that being a good soldier, Partman will obey orders. You've got until tomorrow to save God alone knows how many lives and give this process of a new nation's birth some kind of peace and order. Or it can be a bloody mess. It's your call. Now make it. Because we're not hanging around anymore waiting on you. If you can postpone your departure for a moment, General, as I mentioned before, I do have a surprise for you, said Lodge, as if the whole speech had not been spoken. We understand your concern about members of your organization held in federal custody, and we have been more than willing to release those whom we feel are no longer harmful to society. After some discussion, we felt that this lady fell into that category. He went to the door and opened it. Miss Frost, could you come in, please? There was a flutter at the end of the room, and a tall woman stepped in through the door. She was wearing a scarf over her head to cover her short, patchy blonde hair where it had been largely pulled out by the roots. Her face was a glowing red mask where it had been reconstructed surgically, yet it still showed an expression of suffering unimaginable. Her chest was flat, both breasts gone. Her original face had been removed by the FBI paramedics during her interrogation, strip by strip, with a scalpel, yet through some miracle she was still recognizable. Kathy Frost, still dressed in her drab khaki prison dress with the number on it. For over a year she had been tortured to the point of death, time and again, because the FBI wanted her to betray the whereabouts of her husband. Although they did not know it, Edgar Frost had actually died of his wounds sustained during the contact and been secretly interred in the hills around Coeur d'Alene several days before his wife was captured. Kathy could have saved herself at any time, simply by telling them this and revealing the whereabouts of her husband's body so they could dig it up and destroy it. But she would not talk to the Zog out of principle. In the very height of her torment, all she ever told them was the 5 words, "I have nothing to say," so it went on and on and on until it became a personal issue. The mighty FBI and Homeland Security would make the evil racist bitch speak. But she never did. Her case had become so egregious that even in an America become accustomed to routine torture of so-called domestic terrorists, it had attracted attention, thanks to the heroic effort of her fellow women. H. Covington. Prisoners at Pullman Federal Detention Center who had risked life and limb in torture sessions of their own to smuggle the news of what was being done to her out of the prison. The international community, finally becoming fed up with American behavior in general, had decided to take up her case as a cause célèbre. An interesting example of the trendy Euroleft's hatred of the American empire finally outweighing their distaste for so-called fascists. The entire NVA delegation arose in stunned recognition and respect. The 2 Jewish members of the delegation were dumbstruck. "Who the hell said you could do this, Lodge?" screeched Howard Weintraub at Lodge in fury. "This woman is a Class A terrorist detainee, an unlawful combatant in the direct custody of the Department of Homeland Security. No one has the right to dispose of her except me." Weintraub was especially embarrassed because he had personally supervised her torture in the Pullman Women's Detention Center, while the other women prisoners had sang "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God" to the sound of her screams. "Actually, Mr. Weintraub, it was my idea," said Stanhope quietly. "Ms. Frost's situation was becoming an embarrassment with international ramifications which it is imperative that we moderate, and as such it comes into my purview. If you're worried about some kind of turf issues, I procured the signature of the President of the United States on the warrant authorizing Ms. Frost's release into my custody." "Hillary would never have let Chelsea do any such thing," gasped Jeanette Galinsky in shock. "The President has a tendency to agree in full with the last person she has talked to, as you know, Senator. I had a friend of mine talk to her, and he carried the order in his briefcase. Mrs. Frost is now being handed over to the Northwest Volunteer Army delegation. This is a done deal, and it's a deal that should have been done a long time ago. I am getting just a little bit weary of having to explain to the international community why the land of the free and the home of the brave is skinning women alive in our torture chambers." "Comrade Frost, welcome to Longview," said Barrow, coming forward to grip her hand. "I am glad that you have been able to be here, even if it is on the last day. Are you all right? Jesus, that's a stupid thing to ask." He looked at Stanhope. "You do understand we're taking her with us no matter what happens. You're not getting her back, under any circumstances. Not ever." "You're not getting any of us back," said McCausland in an angry voice. "Not ever." "I'm still alive, General Barrow," said Kathy. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, due to the year of screaming that had nearly destroyed her larynx. "I didn't think I would ever see this day. I have now, and God has been more good to me than I can say." "At least you get a chance to tell your story," said Barrow. "I know this is a hard thing to ask, ma'am, but do you think you could handle some kind of press conference or make some kind of statement for this army of media reptiles we've got overrunning this place?" Kathy looked at Weintraub and her mangled lips broke into a sneer. "Sure, if Mr. Weintraub would stand beside me and explain to them just how I ended up looking like this, I'd be interested to hear his version of things, and then I'll give them mine." "Oh, I couldn't appear in public with a class of terrorists," said Weintraub, suddenly breaking into a guffaw. "I might lose face. It is a simple and underestimated historical truth that the Jewish people are in fact nowhere nearly as clever as either they themselves believe, or as clever as others give them credit for being." Howard Weintraub had forgotten that he was standing a few feet from a large and violent man whose wife had been murdered by a Jew, in a manner very similar to the unspeakable mistreatment that Kathy Frost had through some miracle survived. John Corbett Morgan seemed to take one single step into the air and fly over the table like some mountain Nijinsky. Weintraub went down like he had been hit by a roaring, charging bear. The magnum was at his head, and Barrow was just barely able to grab Morgan's gun hand and knock it aside before he pulled the trigger. The gun thundered and the round went into the floor. Howard Weintraub screamed like a woman in sheer terror. Barrow was wrestling with Morgan, trying to get the piece away from him. "Help me!" he yelled at the others. Gare and Stepanoff and McCausland all came to his aid, grabbing the mountain man around the waist and legs. The door flew open, and a dozen FBI and MPs came running in, Uzis and pistols at the ready. Reporters out in the lobby had heard the shot and were yelling, demanding entry. Cody whipped out his 10mm automatic and leveled it at the first FBI gunner in the bunch. "Back off," he shouted. "Nothing to see here. We'll deal with it. Get the fuck out of this room." Nightshade had vaulted over the table despite the uniform skirt she wore, her switchblade flashing, and she had gotten hold of a screaming Jeanette Galinsky by the hair. She held the blade under the senator's quivering double chin. "You heard him," she yelled at the federal musclemen. "Out the door, all of you, or we'll see how this hog can take a little of what you." Covington. Motherfuckers gave Kathy. The feds stood there like a gaggle of geese, waving their gun barrels in the air, uncertain of what to do. Morgan still had Weintraub clutched in his left fist. He was even stronger than he looked, with Barrow clamped firmly on his right arm, keeping the pointed away and the other three all over him, and he was slamming Weintraub again and again against the wall. It was Kathy Frost who put a stop to it. She walked over and managed to reach through the struggling group of men and simply touch Morgan on the face. And suddenly he stopped. Sensing that she might be able to get through where they could not, the other men let Morgan go, and Barrow was able to quickly twist the gun out of Morgan's hand. "Let him go, brother," she said to Morgan softly. "This is our day, the day when the people of Coeur d'Alene arose against the tyrant and struck him down. Don't let a cockroach have any part of it, even by paying him too much mind as to step on him." "How can you say that, when he did you like that?" said Morgan, still half insane with rage. "I say it because we are the true seed of Adam. It is we who bear the true yoke of God, not these creatures of darkness, and God demands that we be better than they are. All of us have suffered, brother. We share a common pain, you and I, someone beloved whom these devil things took away from us. There will be vengeance and justice for us all in plenty. God will not deny us that. But for everything there is a season." "Ecclesiastes," said McCausland. "Yes," said Kathy, "this is our day. Weintraub has but one part in it. He must sign that paper. Let him go so that the beast will let all of us go." Morgan suddenly released Weintraub, who crumpled to the floor. He had fainted, and the stink that filled the room told of what he had done in his underwear in his terror. Nightshade's nose wrinkled, and she sent a sly smile of remembrance at Cody. "I think I'll always associate this time of my life with the smell of Jews shitting themselves," said Cody in disgust. None of the others picked up on the possible implications of the remark. Barrow picked up the 2 copies of the 6-point treaty. He tossed it down in front of Stanhope. "Screw this. We're not even waiting for tomorrow. We're going upstairs, and we're going to pack our stuff, and I'm going to call Captain Chernilov and tell him to warm up the helicopter. If you decide you want to stop any more killing, sign this and mail us our copy. Otherwise, you can all go fuck yourselves. You don't want peace. Well, it doesn't look like you're going to get it, and your beloved Israel is just going to have to do without the 1,000,000 or so troops we'll be keeping. Occupied here in the Northwest." He quickly tossed the back to Morgan. "Here, John, you may need this yet." He turned to the gun-toting federal officers clustered at one end of the conference room. "Get out of our way," he told them. "Now." Walter Stanhope made a signal to the FBI agent in charge, and they turned and left. The NVA delegation filed out, hands on their guns. "The stairs, not the elevators," commanded Barrow as they pushed through the excited crowd, some of whom recognized Kathy Frost. The reporters shouted questions about Kathy, about the gunshot they had heard, about the whereabouts of the missing Susan Horowitz. After a long and nerve-wracking walk, they reached their rooms. Jane Chenault was staring at pandemonium on CNN. "My God, what happened?" she cried. "What? My God, Kathy, oh, what did they do to you?" "Hi, Jane," said Kathy as the two women hugged one another. "It's so good to see you again." "It doesn't matter, Jane. I have lived to see you all here in the uniform of the country Mark and Eddie died for and I suffered for, and I am fine. Hey, you think this is bad? At least they did some reconstruction on my face before trotting me out in public. 2 months ago I looked like the Phantom of the Opera." "How can you joke about it?" whispered Nightshade in horror. "The best way not to weep is to learn to laugh, Lieutenant," said Kathy. "Look on the bright side. At least the media will now have something else to put on the front page besides you and your boyfriend here going at it like rabbits next to the Coke machine." "Yes, I saw that on the helicopter coming in. They have a video of it," said Jane disapprovingly. "It's been all over the news. I thought we had a very clear no-nookie rule established, young lady." "You do realize now that your mom's worst fears are confirmed?" asked Cody with a grin. "That was part of an undercover mission," Nightshade protested. "Oh, is that what you kids call it now?" asked Kathy. "Cease this bootless badinage and start packing, you guys," said Barrow. "We may yet have to shoot our way out of here." But they didn't. Instead, half an hour later, there was a knock on the door. It was Seamus O'Connell, looking pale and wan. He had lost 20 pounds in the past 10 weeks and even joked about it. "Sure, 'twill take a lot of Bewley's fry-ups and good pints of Guinness to bring me back up to fightin' weight." O'Connell handed Barrow a large leather folding document case. "H. Covington, what's this?" asked Barrow, not able to force himself to look. "Confirmation of what you already know, General," said O'Connell. "The very proof of the pudding, so to speak." "Confirmation of what, Mr. O'Connell?" asked Stepanoff over Barrow's shoulder. "You won the war, gentlemen," said O'Connell. "The Pacific Northwest is yours." Barrow opened the folder and found the treaty inside. It was signed by all 5 American plenipotentiaries. "My country took 800 years to drive out the oppressor at the point of the sword," O'Connell went on. "You lads did it in 5. You're bloody good, I'll give yez that." "We had some good teachers, sir," said Stepanoff with a smile. "The lives of Michael Collins and De Valera were required reading in the party." "How did this happen?" asked Barrow in wonder, staring at the paper in his hand in disbelief. "Mr. Stanhope. Apparently he called them all in and gave them a good talking to. He asks one thing, that you postpone your departure long enough to help with the announcement. It's going to be a bit hard for a lot of people on the American side to swallow. After that, it's all yours." "We'll be down in 20 minutes, said Barrow. After O'Connell was gone, Stepanoff said that must have been some talking to. What in the name of the devil did he say to them? "I suspect he was speaking with Lodge's voice," said Barrow. "Lodge is nothing if not a businessman. Theatrics don't convince him, but he knows better than to pour good money after bad. That's all I can think of. Let's just take it as a miracle and leave it at that." The news still hadn't sunk in, and everyone was simply standing and looking at one another. "So what do we tell the world at the press conference?" asked Cody. "How good are you at making historic speeches, sir? You did all right in the conference." "We don't tell the world anything, Lieutenant," said Barrow. "We show them." He went to his suitcase and pulled out a large plastic bag, from which he drew a folded tricolor flag of strong weatherproof nylon. 6 by 10, pre-10, 22 party manufacture, he said, opening a few of the folds. Made in Taiwan for one of the old party front companies, ironically. This is the one that flew over the Central Post Office in Coeur d'Alene 5 years ago, during the 16 days. Red Morehouse gave it to me before I came down here. This hotel has a very fine outdoor speaker system for golf tournaments and whatnot. I'm giving Chernilov another call, and I'm going to ask him to send down all those CDs he has of classical music so we can select something nice and dignified to play as we march out there and lower that red, white, and blue flag of a once noble experiment that failed so badly and raise up this flag of a new nation wherein hopefully we'll do a better job this time. Maybe this time we'll learn to keep the rats out of the barn, suggested Morgan hopefully. I hope so, John. Comrade Frost, would you do the honors? "I would be honored, sir," said Kathy. It took almost an hour to get everything set up, get the reporters and everyone else herded outside to await an unannounced major event, and get the American delegation present. Weintraub and Galinsky originally refused to attend, and Barrow shrugged. "Fine with me," he said. And yet at the last minute they came downstairs, white and staring, creeping quietly up to the fringe of the group that stood in the lobby speaking in low tones, unable to keep away. "Are we ready?" said Barrow. "I know I am. Where's McCausland and Gare?" Cody appeared at Barrow's side. "Sir, could you come into the office?" he said in a low voice. "We have a problem." The problem was John McCausland and Robert Gare, standing in the back room of the office where the public address system's control panel was placed, bellowing at one another with rage. This time it was John Corbett Morgan who was keeping them apart. They seemed about ready to start swinging on one another, while Dr. Doom, who was in charge of the PA, sat hunkered in the chair in astonishment with a small stack of music CDs in front of him. "What the hell?" demanded Barrow. "Musical differences, sir," said Lieutenant Waters. "This day will be a celebration of the victory of Christ," screamed McCausland. "It will be a statement to the world that this new land will not be some kind of comic book Fourth Reich of socialism and paganism. I've put up with this constant derision of the Bible and the Christian faith for 10 weeks now, General, but by God, sir, this one time we are going to acknowledge that America is a Christian country and that we are a Christian people, and we always will be. For 50 years, Zog has shut God out of our national life. No more, damn you." "Major McCausland wants me to play Handel's Hallelujah Chorus," explained young Waters. 20 million Germans and other Nordic peoples slaughtered," bellowed Gare. "Babies burned in their cribs in the Dresden firestorm, from bombs dropped by Christians fighting for the Jews and the Jew God. German women raped by the millions by the Bolsheviks. You want to go back before that? Try the 30 Years' War, 2,000 years of white. A Covington. People slaughtering one another because some of us are stupid enough to worship a goddamned Jew as a god. This day is vengeance for 1945, and it's a sign that our folk have finally awakened, and we are casting off all these Jew lies." "Captain Gare wants the ride of the Valkyries from Wagner," said Dr. Doom. "Oh, for Christ's sake," yelled Barrow. "Okay, bad choice of words. You guys just couldn't leave it alone, could you? I suppose you want something else, Commandant?" "Actually, I'd like some Charlie Daniels, but this Russian chopper pilot seems kind of light on country," said Morgan. "Well, let's see what else he's got," said Barrow, pawing through the CDs. The problem was that Chernilov was a Russian and he had mostly heavy classical stuff. "Okay, looks like we're going to have to find something to compromise with. Nuts, I have no idea what most of this stuff even is. Well, here we go. Hohenfried Burgermarsch, The Hills of Peace, by Frederick the Great. A good, solid, dignified piece." "The Nazis were very big on Alte Fritz," agreed Gare. "Okay, that will do. So instead of a pagan piece about female demons flying through the air, we play a Nazi song?" growled McCausland. "Enough, gentlemen," said Kathy Frost calmly from the doorway. "We are in the presence of the enemy. This has to stop, and it has to stop now. If you think that this movement owes me anything, I want you to lay your differences aside and this my way, on just this one occasion. It is the only reward I will ever ask of the party." She opened her purse and took out a Walkman CD player. She took out the CD inside. "I asked the Red Cross for this when I was released," she said, handing it to Waters. "Lieutenant, when the tricolor begins to go up the flagstaff, please play track number 4, as loud as you can. It is my favorite hymn, the one my imprisoned sisters sang for me so I could hear it while I was being tortured under the so-called Dershowitz protocols. Yes, Captain, it is Christian, but it was written by one of the greatest men of our race who ever lived, a German. His name was Martin Luther. The name of it is Ein Festberg ist unser Gott, which means a mighty fortress is our God. However you view God or the gods or whatever destiny rules our world, this day could not have come about without the approval of that force. He has been with us, gentlemen, throughout all these terrible years, and even if we have forgotten him, he has never forgotten us. Play track 4, Lieutenant."